Hello, AP GovPol students. Today I want to cover that part of constitutional development early in the stages of the Constitution where they had to make a definitive written statement as to why the Constitution was being written. And they came up with a preamble to the Constitution. So I want to focus on the preamble today because the preamble to the Constitution answers the questions why. So if we take a look at the preamble, it says, we the people. That says who is doing this. Not we the states, not we a dictator, we the people, in order to do what? I want you to notice the 6 verbs that are being used in the preamble. So we the people do what? Form. What do they form? A more perfect union. Why was that important? Because the union under the Articles of Confederation was imperfect. It was a loose confederation. They call it Articles of Confederation, like 13 different little countries, and they had a kind of a common defense pact, but they were on their own little countries. And so there were all kinds of problems that related to that. One country would put tariffs on the goods coming in, or one state would put tariffs on the goods coming in from another state as if it were a completely separate country, which it was. So they wanted to form a more perfect union. And that way they would be in a position in a tighter federal government to be able to assist one another and to smooth out this border crossing thing. The next thing we have is establish justice. And the reason this is so high on the priority is because under the Articles of Confederation, there was only one branch of government, and that was the legislative branch. There was no executive or judicial branch. That was left to the states. And as we saw with Shays' Rebellion in Massachusetts, they didn't feel that they were getting justice. They were paid, the veterans of the Revolutionary War were paid in Continental dollars. The state of Massachusetts would not accept the Continental dollars in payment for taxes. They insisted on gold. Well, what were the farmers in Massachusetts? They didn't have gold. They were raising chickens and sheep and cattle and horses, things that were needed for life, but they weren't able to pay their taxes in cattle and crops and chickens and sheep and so forth. So they were having their farms foreclosed on, and they felt that they weren't getting justice. And that's what Shays' Rebellion was to move to shut down the courts so that farmers wouldn't lose their farms for failure to pay taxes or failure to pay the mortgage in a currency that the lenders or the government would not accept. So establish justice was a goal of this new federal government. Ensure domestic tranquility. We also look right back at Shays' Rebellion and the fear that this could happen in any state, not just Massachusetts. Domestic tranquility means peace. Are we going to have rebellions and riots in the street, or will we have peace? So that's another goal. The next goal is provide for the common defense. And if we take a look at the whole, the scenario at the time, the United States, this fledgling new country, just won a war against the most powerful country in the world, Great Britain. But Great Britain was still the most powerful country in the world. They just realized that the United States, or America, was just too big to police everywhere. They gave up and went home. But that doesn't mean they didn't rule the seas. They had the biggest navy in the world. It was still a threat to the security of the United States. There were other countries that had big, strong navies, strong militaries. France was one. The Dutch from the Netherlands was another. Spain was still to be reckoned with. And so there was this threat, external threat, and so they needed a common defense. And they couldn't just stand alone in order to be able to defend themselves against those big powers. They wanted to be together. So a goal was to provide the common defense. Next, you notice it says promote. Promote what? The general welfare. It doesn't say provide the general welfare. It doesn't say ensure the general welfare. It doesn't say establish the general welfare. It doesn't say form the general welfare. No, it says promote the general welfare, because they've adopted the philosophy of largely of individualism. It's up to each person to make their living, to make their own way in life. The government isn't there to give them a handout, to provide them anything other than a consistent rule of law and equal opportunity for everyone so that they could then improve their own general welfare. But the government shouldn't stand in the way of that, so they should promote that. And what does that lead us to is the sixth verb, which is secure. Secure the blessings of liberty. The whole idea of this independence movement to form the United States and become free of the overlords of Great Britain or any other country was to have liberty, to be able to do what they want. In Europe, they couldn't do what they wanted. They were under a monarchy or a tight, tough government. They didn't have religious freedom. They didn't have freedom of speech. They didn't have the right to assembly. They didn't have the right to keep and bear arms. All of these things limited them. In Europe, they didn't have a right to privacy and to be secure in their possessions and their own property. So these were concerns that they thought would be eliminated by pointing to the blessings of liberty, the results of liberty. And they wanted to secure that in this new Constitution. So if you remember these six verbs and what these verbs did, it will put you in good position when you have to write a paper about parts of the Constitution. What was the Constitution intended to do? And therefore, then the Constitution spells out how the federal government is going to accomplish these six verbs.